Hello, how are you today? It started as a beautiful day with sunshine, and later this evening, cold chipped in. But I'm glad you are here at the 47th annual W.E.B Du Bois Distinguished Lecture. My name is Gloria Chukwu, Professor and Chair of Africana Studies. I'm here, of course, to recognize our Dean, Dr. John Stowe McAllister. And I think a couple of our associate deans are here, and research directors, if you can raise your hand or wave. But I want to recognize the departments and units that made this event possible. These are offices that help sponsor the event. Money talks. Without money, the lecture will not be possible. So I want to extend my gratitude to the Office of the Dean of the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, to the Center for Social Science Scholarship, the Division of Professional Studies, the Dresser Center for Humanities, and the Shriver Center. Thank you immensely for your support. I'm going to do something that has never done before, singling out individuals who made this event, working behind the scene, possible. On August 29th, the department lost its admin staff and had to rely on individuals from the dean's office to the Office of Achievement and Research Administration team, and of course to the Center and Social Science Scholarship. So I'm going to recognize these individuals. If you are here, please wave your hand. Down the Bosky from the dean's office, Pam Doppler from the dean's office, Amy Burns from the Center for Social Science Scholarship. Amy, you finally made it. And of course, Sierra Jackson. She must have stepped out. And Miriam Ralston. Miriam, are you here? Thank you very much for helping make this 47th annual Du Bois Lecture possible. It is in times like this that we draw inspiration from the legacy of Du Bois scholarship and activism. Through lens of contemporary research about race and racism, Du Bois, the preeminent Black scholar, political activist of the early 20th century, who became a sociologist, a historian, influential intellectual, public figure, writer, and an ardent Pan-Africanist and social activist, left a legacy that has remained foundational to today's research on health, economic, and social impacts of racism. He was the first African-American person to earn a PhD from Harvard University. And of course, you can read the back page of the program to get a glimpse of Du Bois as a scholar and what some of his ideals and ideological perspectives were. Now I have a few announcements before we get to the business of the day. I want to remind Africana Studies majors and minors of the deadline for the Electrical Njaka Scholarship and Creative Research Award that is coming. That will be February 2nd, 2026. Please visit the Africana Studies website for more information about this important scholarship. And of course, I want to recognize James Wiggins, who, with his wife, donated money for that scholarship. Please, James, a round of applause. I'm not sure how many of you are aware that you can pursue Africana Studies as a double major. By the way, how many of you are our majors and minors in this hall? Can you stand up? Don't be shy. I'm not putting you at the spot. We want to recognize you. We want to encourage other students to think about pursuing Africana Studies as a second major or even as a minor. All it takes to get a minor in Africana Studies is 18 credits. Please consider that. It will enrich your marketability when you leave UMBC. At this juncture, I'm going to invite our famous Jubilee Choir to make their presentation. Welcome to the 47th Annual Du Bois Lecture.
the UMBC Gospel Choir and Jubilee Singers. And we are always happy to be here celebrating this W.E.B Du Bois lecture that has been, and we've been doing this for over 30 years. I'm telling on myself. Okay, so, but we are always happy to be here celebrating this wonderful event. So I would like to introduce our pianist, Joyanne Amani. And we have a student director, one of our student assistants, Jaden Hackley. He will be conducting the next piece, So Good. If it gets so good, you can clap with us, you can stand, you can do whatever you like. And then we'll have the lecture going on, right? So I would also like to tell you, if you would like to hear more of us, we will be having a concert on Saturday, December the 6th at 5 o'clock in the concert hall in Pop. So I welcome you there. The concert is free. All right.
I can
feel very honored to welcome Professor Ousseina Alidou to our campus to give the 47th annual Du Bois Lecture. Dr. Ousseina is a distinguished professor of human letters in the School of Arts and Science, Rutgers University, New Brunswick. She teaches in the Department of African, Middle Eastern, and Southeast Asian Languages and Literatures, and the graduate program in comparative literature. Dr. Alidou's specialization is theoretical linguistics, gender, and African studies. She is the author of 3 books and 3 co-edited volumes, including Protest as Gender and Social Change, Fiction, and Popular Songs in Hausa Societies Across Borders, published by Michigan State University, or Michigan University Press in 2023. Her second book, Muslim Women in Post-Colonial Kenya, Leadership, Representation, Political and Social Change, was published by University of Wisconsin Press in 2013. Her third book, Engaging Modernity, Muslim Women and the Politics of Agency in Post-Colonial Niger, was published by the same University Press of Wisconsin. And this book was a runner-up Adio Snyder Book Prize of Women Caucus of African Studies Association in 2005. Dr. Alidou also co-edited 3 books, as I mentioned earlier on, including Writing Through the Visual and Virtual, Inscribing Language, Literature, and Culture in Francophone African and the Caribbean. Second book, Post-Conflict Reconstruction in Africa. And the third co-edited book is titled 1,000 Flowers, Social Struggles Against Structural Adjustment in African Universities. In addition, she has published over 50 book chapters and articles which appear in such important professional academic journals as Research in African Literatures, Spach und Gusche in Africa. I don't know if I'm murdering that German language. Comparative Literature, Comparative Studies of South Asia, Africa, and Middle East, and not the least, Africa Today. These are very, very important journals, academic journals in the field of African and Asian and comparative literature studies. Dr. Alidou has served as the president of the African Studies Association between 2022 and 2023, and also as the director of the Center for African Studies at Rutgers University. Currently, she serves as a senior faculty advisor to UNESCO Breeder for the design of UNESCO Rutgers University's Gender and Transformative Leadership Curriculum for African universities and civil society organizations. She is the recipient of several national and international scholarly and service awards, including Library of Congress, chair in countries and cultures of the South, which is ongoing. Rutgers University's Global Impact Award, Obafemi Awolowo Center for Gender and Social Policy Studies Distinguished Visiting Scholar Service Award, Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Award, Newark Women in the Media Distinguished Community Service Award, Rutgers University 2011 Warren R. Sussman Award for Excellence in Teaching, African American Institute's Distinguished Alumni Award, Ford Foundation Human Rights and Social Justice Grant Award, and of course, Rutgers University Board of Trustees Scholarly Excellence Award, among others, because we have to get to the lecture. I can't list all her achievements and accomplishments in the field. Please help me in welcoming to the podium Professor Ousseina Alidou.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, habari gani, nyangadef, inaouni, bonsoir. Comment allez-vous? Yeah, ça va bien? Merci, c'est magnifique. Yeah. It is really a great honor and a very humbling honor to be here with you today to sing the song for all. I'm forever grateful to each one of you and to Professor Gloria Chuku, my elder sister, senior colleague, for this amazing honor of inviting me to our wonderful University of Maryland today. Dalu, sister, I'm forever grateful to you. This is in Igbo. I'm saying Dalu, now Gode, Sanu, from the bottom of my heart. To each one of you, to Dean John McAllister, thank you so much for making this possible, for your wonderful support to this wonderful initiative to honor the life of a great humanist, W.E.B Du Bois, for bringing us all together. I'm deeply grateful to you. I'm grateful to Professor Jackson and her amazing choir, for lightening up and calling us to the call, to the very seed that W.E.B Du Bois has planted long time ago, for it to germinate, to flourish, to create moments like this one of gathering across our diversity beyond one place, to bring so many places together. I'm very grateful. It is an amazing place for me today because there is someone so special also who has been here, who has been a great friend, a mentor, who says it is possible for someone who is coming from the Sahel to come and do linguistics and make it who you have. And for surprise, I haven't seen that person for 40 years. This is Professor Omar Ka. Jerejef, Prof. Jerejef. Yeah, he's a great colleague, a great brother. Earlier on, I had a conversation with our wonderful colleagues from Africana sitting right here beside Professor Chuku. understood and asked the questions. Wonderful question, engagement. We'll come back to that. But I want to join Professor Chukwu in thanking everyone who made this possible for me to be here with you today. The preparation, it takes a long time. Dan, Sierra, yeah, I feel like I've known you forever through email exchanges. And forgive me for when I couldn't do this one and that one on email. You have been very patient, and I'm very grateful to you. Thank you for making it possible for me to get into the train, to have the hotel room, and the Hyatt Hotel has been great. And for the people who fed us today, I say thank you. Thank you to each one of you. The dinner was fantastic. The gathering was great. Thank you. I wish you the very best as well. Thank you. So today, I want to say thank you to Professor Chukwu again for this generous introduction. But everything one does in life depends on the generosity of those who create the opportunity for us to be here. And so, long time ago, W.E.B Du Bois says this is the world where the people of African descent and the people of the world should have covenancy, come together, because we live one common humanity. And so as a transdisciplinary person, as a humanist, he has impacted our world. So it's with great humility that I'm here. What I think in a humble way, W.E.B Du Bois tried to do is to transform the ecological landscape through which we walk and we interact and we cultivate common grounds for humanity to flourish beyond the boundaries of our differences. So that requires a little bit more of a generosity of our part to do the work of translations. I mean translations across our discipline, translation across our languages, translations across our histories, translations across our economies, translation and commoning in the sharing to reduce inequalities, to be the gate openers, to widen the gates of opportunities. Those gates of opportunities, as we widen them, a person like me, in my humble way, coming from Niger Republic, coming from the Sahel Republic, can stand before you today to deliver with great sense of humility the 47 W.E. Du Bois lecture. For someone who came to this America, where we can all sing the song, as the choir of Professor Jackson tell us, can accommodate someone who came from a French colony and being in a discipline which was not from the English department. I came without the English language. But what the journey, thanks to the Africa America Institute, has offered me is the possibility that a person like myself, a woman from the Sahel, Niger, which if you look at or listen to the mainstream media, you cannot imagine a young woman or a senior woman, because I'm middle-aged now, right, Professor Ka? I came to the US in 1988, with my twin sister, identical twin sister, who was a linguist who attended the same university where Professor Carr attended. My twin sister and myself did not speak English to a level where we can write academic work. But thanks to the scholarship of the African American Institute, thanks to the American scholarship granted to the country Niger Republic, the promise that W.E.B Du Bois is thinking about when he had a dialogue between him and Booker T. Washington in his seminal book, The Soul of Black Folk. Which type of education should be imparted to people who are coming out of a harsh history to become, so that they can flourish and they can contribute to our great common humanity. America gave me that scholarship. So you think about it. America gave me the language, gave to so many Africans coming from Niger, from Mali, Senegal, Francophone world, Lusophone Africa, the opportunity to say, you too can cross the barriers of language to acquire the type of higher education, the type of liberal art education that will allow you to be great thinkers, but not just great thinkers in the ivory tower, but great thinkers who will think of research for social transformation so that you can impact the communities you're coming from, but you can make the world community your communities. I believe wherever I go, it is that gift of generosity, that tension that a while ago Du Bois, in an ethical way, tell us we can cross the hurdle of a history of the transatlantic slavery, of Jim Crow, of colonization, to reconstruct society so that other world also could learn, so that we can be together to sing the song. So once I got the opportunity to have a PhD at Indiana University, my teachers were those young American students who a while ago also had a dream similar to what Du Bois called for. They were Peace Corps in many of African societies. Professor Newman, I studied under Professor Newman, Paul Newman, the great linguist of Afro-Asiatic linguistics, and his wife and life partner, Professor Ma Newman. Here's a Jewish man, American Jewish, married to a Chinese American, spending time in Africa to say it is possible that we will deal with this world and share and contribute to the raising of greater humanity. There are other professors. Professor Kisberth of University of Illinois, Professor Eyamba Bokamba, Professor Jennifer Yanko, Professor John Hutchison, many of them who spend time in Africa to say we will help African University create the Department of Linguistics, where there will be valorization of African languages, African literacy traditions, so that the generation of Africans that we cultivate, that we raise, will know that African languages are equal. African scripts are equal to other world scripts. And they too, through them, they can be medium of transmission of language, of knowledge, scientific knowledge. So they demystify the racialization of language. They demystify the idea that if you don't speak European languages, if you don't write with Latin script, then you are inferior to any other. It is American of all race and creeds who have done that. So we can do that. And so the gift I receive is the gift of inscribing myself in that ethical framework to say, yes, I got a PhD, but I must return home to bring from home those libraries, those indigenous knowledge systems, those possible conversations that were not included in the curriculum, that we inherited from colonization, that also the post-independence governance system did not invest much to rethink the new society. This is the call that individuals, in a humble way, like Professor Omar Ka, like my twin sister, Ousseina Alidou, resting in peace, and many others who say, yes, it's possible. Yes, we owe that to the world to rethink the new society, to rethink the place of Africa and African descent, not only in the US, but in the Americas, who have been using African languages and script to speak and offer the African worldview and to critique it, because it is important, the same way that we want to valorize, but we do not essentialize. When there are problems in those indigenous cultures and societies, we must be able to address it. So the challenge for me as a linguist, coming from my society, the society in the Sahel, is to look at what is the contribution of African women from the Sahel in the field of orality and multiple literacy traditions, and to put them in conversation to the inherited literacy traditions across field, and to see where are the gaps, where are the absences, and where are the promises, the potential that other world must learn from, which were not and are not present, and we still are working on African women's libraries in the world. So ecology has become an important site for me because we are facing climate change, climate vulnerability, we are facing issues of natural resources use, and encroachment on indigenous communities' land of farming and land of pastoralism and grazing. We are thinking of how the exploitation of water and lack of access to water, what does it mean to population that have been struggling and have contributed so much to ecological equilibrium, and yet today they're faced with challenges that the Nobel Peace Laureate Wangari Maathai tells us we need to pay attention to. So we saw that in one aspect of Du Bois' intervention is global peace. We cannot achieve global peace if we do not address issues of inequalities and access to resources, access to food, access to education, and access to employment. So, but for us to have access to the right education, to the right employment, we must look at systems of governance, and we must look at gender inequalities. So I'm looking at the Sahel space. So for this today's lecture, the lecture will focus more on West African Sahel. When we talk about the Sahel, it's really stretches from the Atlantic to the Red Sea. These are countries including Mauritania, including part of northern Senegal, Niger, Mali, Chad, Sudan, Ethiopia, Djibouti. This is the Sahel belt, right? But I'm focusing today more on Niger and Nigeria, and also Burkina Faso, and to some extent Mali, etc. What does it mean to be women coming from those regions and to think ecologically, right? Why exploring women's creative ecological thought in the Sahel? And I'm adopting a transcultural approach to environmental peace and transethnic care. When we are in the Sahel, the idea of thinking only within a monolithic ethnicity, not in relation, does not work. And ecologically, it does not work. Because Sahel is a place where hospitality is what defines how people negotiate ecological challenges. So this is a zone where ecology is not always stable. Pastoralists, agriculturalists, people fishing have to know how to negotiate and share waters and share grazing areas and share economies. It is also the place where there is a great level of inter-ethnic reconstitution. So that when somebody said, I am a Fulani person, it is possible that person is also a Hausa, or a Sonrai, a Soninke, or a Wolof, right? A Bamanaka, right? Or an Amazigh, Berber, Tuareg. And this is not incompatible, because that's what the nature of the Sahel is. So as much as the idea of the new demography and census inherited colonially would want people to be within one ethnicity, it does not work. And when it is imposed like that, it creates more crisis. So that is why I'm inviting people to think of the Sahel more in terms of trans-ethnic, trans-communal, and sharing. The ecology requires that we become interdependent, and this is important. But the fact that you are in the Sahel also means that you are in relationship with people who are deep in the Savannah South and deep in the Savannah, in the Sahara. That's what it is to be a Sahelian. So in terms of agriculture, for instance, I give you an example, and you should go and do the test. There is no event that takes place in Niger, and if you are from northern Niger or northern Nigeria where there is no kola nut. Do you know kola nut? So the same way that you must have date, the fruit date, you must have kola nuts. If you don't have these two things, you don't have naming ceremony, you don't have marriage, you don't have also the honoring of life at death. So you check any ecological narrative, especially by women. This element, kola nuts, will be present. So it tells us something, the relationship between the Muslims of the Sahel and the predominantly non-Muslims who may be Christians predominantly from Eastern Nigeria, for instance, the Igbo. You just read Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. You will see the place of kola nuts. But the kola nuts has more meaning in the Sahel, among the Hausa, among the Fulani, than other people. And women's narrative will tell you, you cannot bring just dowry to a mother-in-law without bringing the kola nuts basket. That's what ecological thought is about. It is about recognizing the element of nature, of culture, that binds people rather than divide people. So here are two communities and multiple communities with different religions, but they trade. Who they are depends on the elements of culture, of agriculture, from the other side that in popular media was presented as impossibility. Let's think about it. Yeah, I give you another example. When we are celebrating in a Yoruba society, akara, the beans cake, Prof is everybody African, moi moi, the Yoruba speakers, and akara in Brazil, right? Osei in Hausa society, right? The moi moi are the Yoruba people who will make the bean cake. In Brazil, if you are celebrating Ilefe, or in Latin America, condomble, and all that, you need the akara, you need the bean cake. Black eyed peas, that's what I'm talking about. So the culinary art of African women to celebrate life, that black eyed peas comes from the Sahel. Around most of the beans, the protein intake, the vegetable protein intake of the black eyed peas comes from the Sahel. And yet, the people who create the global diaspora, local and global diaspora, African diaspora, around the akara, around the moi moi, are not in the Sahel. They're in Western Nigeria, they're in Eastern Nigeria, they're in Southern Nigeria, they're in Ghana and other places. They're in Brazil, and even here in Harlem, the Bronx, and certainly in Maryland. So imagine what is the relationship between the Sahel, Africa, and the other places that we always see as places of conflict. This is why Du Bois' sociology is very critical, because Du Bois has to reinvent American sociology by going into communities to look at closely the practice of life. Yeah? So I'm suggesting those ways of thinking across cultures in Africa, that African women's writings, if you take Chimamanda Adichie, who is an Igbo writer who lives right here in Maryland, in African Love Stories anthology by Ama Eto Edu, she wrote a short story that is so beautiful that shows this ethnic solidarity, trans-regional, trans-religious solidarity. It's called Transition to Glory. I'm inviting you to read it. And you will see the akara and moi moi, the woman who makes the akara and sell it. The Hausa Fulani men who come from the north and find a job in Lagos carrying water when there is NEPAD, where there is no electricity, and you live on the 5th floor, and this Hausa carry man takes the water for you all the way to the 5th floor. These are ethical narratives that I call ecological narratives, dealing with issues of water scarcity and refusal to have the governance providing electricity in communities. The narrative is transformed. This is what ecological narrative is about. So I would like us to think about those. So who are the Sahelian people? This is, I'm sure, in Maryland, we encounter Sahelian people. Each one of us here, many one of you, I'm sure, will know somebody who is a Fulani, who may be Hausa Fulani, who may be Yoruba Fulani, but you ask them, they say, I'm Yoruba. If they're from Ilorin, they're certainly mixed. Those categories don't get included. They're Songhai people. This is not what is represented. So the lecture. The lecture is the space for ecological narratives, and I'm inviting you. Some of you may be doing research for your PhD, for your master's, for your BA, honors thesis. You go and do research on ecological narratives, oral narratives, written narratives by women, songs, poems, dealing with the lectured. And you will have a total difference about understanding of what is it that is going on and that is represented in the media about people whose lives depend on the lectured and what they have become. So I want to show you somebody from the lectured area from Niger is right here. This is the first woman from Niger, from Africa, working at NASA. She's an hydrologist, Dr. Faji Maina. She's also affiliated to the University of Maryland, right here, your university. So if we are talking about the lectured, if we are talking about water, if we are thinking about ecological narrative, you have an African woman from Niger, like myself, and also from northern Nigeria, Maiduguri, because we are from cross-border identities. She's a geologist working at NASA. You can interview her across discipline. Imagine the lectured. Why there is tension in cultures where you talk about Fulani herders encroaching on farmers' land. Most of the Fulanis from the lectured area, the Sahel, if we talk about animal intake in milk, in cheese, in skin, producing our shoes, this and that, many of them come from this. Imagine from 1963 to 2007, look at what the lectured has become. So imagine the livelihood of Fulani women, the Wodabe women Fulanis, and who live a transhumance life because they have to graze. They're pastoralist nomadic. So they have to keep going south. And that transhumance historically has been welcomed by farmers because when animals pass, where the herds pass, it also fertilizes the land. So there is great exchange between farmers and pastoralists. The Fulani women know medicinal plants, and there are many trans-ethnic groups throughout West Africa and Central Africa who depends on herbal medicine of the Fulani pastoralist women. I'm not talking about the Fulani sedentarian. Those are two different things. But the Fulanis who are coming from here, whose story we see covered in this. This is the landscape where they come from. So I brought this novel that speaks about how their story of ecology, rather than addressing this ecological problem, their stories is mingled with a horrific organization problem that is Boko Haram. Those are two different things. But the neoliberal geopolitics want to close eyes on this real ecological problem of the shrinking of the lectured. And yet, around the lectured is where petroleum extraction is taking place and where agriculture is taking place, producing wheat for other world rather than the subsistence agriculture for the indigenous people of there. That story we don't get. But when we read, we listen to the songs, the poem of the Fulani women, the poem or songs of the Buduma women, who are the fishing women, using the lectured, which they cannot use anymore. When we read novels like this one, Habiba, we can see a different story. That's why ecological thought by African women are very important, because they're more interested in global peace, local peace, peace among different ethnicities, and exchange rather than the big narratives of dismissing other populations. So land and rights narrative must be matched with a story, the creative story, and then we will get closer to the reality of what is going on. So the 10-year challenges of improving access to water for agriculture and land, women's access to water and land is protected under international human rights law. The CEDAW prohibits discrimination against women. It also requires states to adopt measures to quote, ensure the full development and advancement of women, and to modify the social and cultural patterns of conduct of men and women with a view to achieving the elimination of prejudice and customary and any other rights. When we hear the story about Boko Haram around the lecture, we don't hear the story of how women are talking about the denial of rights, both by organization, horrible, lethal organization like Boko Haram, but also the states that deny them the rights, and also multinational corporations that are vested in mineral extractivism, industrial mineral extractivism of petrol, of uranium. I'll come to that other region, and water, without taking account on the rights of the people and women. So when women try to invest time to regreen the little grazing area that is allocated to them, this is like a desert. They transform some spaces into green area for agriculture. There is no state protection. The more the land becomes regreen, the more women are pushed outside. So agriculturalists, women, farmers, you see them in urban areas becoming beggars, where they have worked hard to regreen the space. So when you read African writers from those regions who are writing ecologically, whether in a creative sense, whether through novels, short stories, poetry, songs, or film, documentary film, and fictional films. You see a fiction film, you see this story coming out. They are more interested in creating life, in cultivating life, in protecting life. So, Ousseina Alidou is from Burkina Faso and Senegal. She's mixed. She went to Niger and saw the condition of the Fulani pastoralist women around the story of water. And she produced this wonderful documentary that I'm inviting you, when you have time, because I am restricted by time, to watch this documentary and see it. So she is looking ecologically at the condition of this pastoralist woman, the Wodabe. So they're Fulani, but I'm talking about the Fulani Wodabe woman and men and children whose space is linked to the issue of water that we see. Their issue is not religious. Their issue is water, both for the earth and for human. So Ousseina Alidou produced this film, Above Water. I may not have time, but I may come to this one. So documentary films are now coming out to present. So it is in French and in English, with English subtitle. You have access to that. Well, Ousseina Alidou focused on documentaries to show what is happening to produce a non-fictional narrative. Ramatu Keita from Niger decided there is so much negative imaging of African women as helpless, the Sahel women. It's always the story of Boko Haram. They're tired. So she produced an alterity, a narrative. The same W.E.B woman, Ramatu Keita, is also partly Fulani, partly Sonrai, partly Mandeng. By the name Keita, you can really see she's a Mandeng too by her father. But by her father, she's a W.E.B, she's a Fulani person. So she produced a film that gives us the ecological life, the romance, the love, the sharing among women. That's often when we see them in mainstream media, it's a really helpless, abject, and all that is their carriers of violence. So this is not how we see life. Yeah? So fiction backed with scientific documentary accounting can give us something that is close to reality, that is hidden. I moved to the north side of Niger in the middle and deep Sahara, the Amazigh Tuareg women. In the Sahara, ecologically, you know that climate vulnerability, there is drought, there is famine, but there is also uranium. Yeah, do you know uranium, the yellow cake? So that's what we have. That in the land occupied by the Tuareg, the Fulani, the Shua Arab, the Hausa, and many other groups of the north. So what do we do? When you are facing extractivism, you are facing climate vulnerability of prolonged drought and famine, you are facing poor governance that does not invest from the tiny revenue from the uranium or petrol or any other mineral. There is not investment in those populations from those areas that suffer the most. What happened? So yes, there may be yellow cake, but it's not yellow cake for them. So for the women, if for some the young people take up rebellion, armed resistance, which we have seen the so-called Tuareg resistance, rebellion against the government, the women are not producing such kind of things. You go to the community, they are more invested in ecological recovery. And they produce narratives, either in the folktale, in the songs, in novels, in paintings, that talks about the intersection of climate change, climate vulnerability, extractivism, and the disenfranchisement from access to equal state resources out of those state revenue. So it's an issue of social justice. That's what they talk about in their tales. And I'm inviting you to read them. They're very important. Most of them are in indigenous languages. Now we have translations of those stories in the French language, in English language. And we cannot hide to say, they speak African languages, we cannot understand that. But guess what? That's why you have wonderful Department of World Languages, Department of French, Department of Africana, right? And I'm sure if you come to all the professors in those language departments and in Africana, they will help you find someone in these regions of the world who speak those languages, who read in Tifinagh script or in Arabic script, Ajami script, that is used to write African languages, to transcribe, translate, and so that you can do critical work to understand this real problem rather than absorb just what the media projects. Because what the media projects, if it is not within the framework that Du Bois is talking about the need to challenge racism in understanding real life problem. Once we dismiss racism, racialization, and that does not only happen between people of the global north and people of the global south. When I talk about government disenfranchising their own citizens, that is a form of inequalities, injustices that we must address. And African communities are speaking about that. When we have the Ngoni problems in the Niger Delta, because of the way petrol is extracted, and up to today, what the Niger Delta people experience is environmental pollution. It is state neglect. It is ecological problems that the American physicians of consciousness, just like the way they did in the Niger Delta, they did in the Sahel-Sahara region, to say the uranium extractivism is having a problem. For some of you who are working on cancer oncology, you can look at how uranium is exploited in an open pit. I grew up where the date trees are tall and yield dates, where wheat grow. But because of the pollution, because of the radiation, the tale that comes from those anthologies by women will tell you the new diseases that they do not understand, that their ancestors, they themselves growing up never encountered. So if you are in the history of medicine, if you are in the medical field, you start to look at environmentally human-made driven diseases. Then you have a different story about the Sahel and why there is crisis in the Sahel, and how these women peacefully tell you the history of this new disease that their indigenous healing practices cannot help them address because it was so alien to them. In the areas where there is a lot of gold, in southwest Niger, there is a lot of mercury. So the diseases related to mercury in water are not worth the extractivism that is going on. And ecologically, we are losing agrarian, fishing, and other forms of life. The problem is, and the reality is, the ethics of ecological thinking is not only to think about the human. I'm also thinking about life, the other biological lives, like the trees, the plants, the animals, the insects. Bees are important. What happens when we no longer have bees? Birds are important. What happens when we no longer have bees? You go to some places, you find only skeletons of cows, camels, sheep, and goats. We are not the only living beings, but this is what we are doing. So the tales from the women of the Sahel, they talk about that. But they talk about that not in a way of creating sadness, but they talk about that in a creative way so that we can be proactive to see the worth of life, to see the necessity to honor life and to contribute to cherishing life to a point that we can be in solidarity with the environment, with land, with water, with the air, that we are not going to pollute, so that, as the song of the Professor Johnson Choir said, we should sing the song. We should all be in this place, enjoying life. Not only few people, but the majority. Aisha Maki is another sociologist, filmmaker, and poet of Niger who has produced a number of films. But the one I'm inviting you to screen when you have time, the title is called Zender. Zender is the first capital of Niger before it was moved to Niamey, located on the Niger River. the argument produced before, just at the dawn of independence, was that there is a challenge of water in Zender, so the capital should be moved. But the reality is there is a lot of water in Zender, because the Sahel-Sahara used to be green space. It is ocean that dry up, and the subterranean water is there. So what is needed is forage, investment, desalinization to remove the salt. But that's not where the investment was going. Today, in Zender, there is water, because that's where the petrol refinery is. But that is also the place where there is a huge unemployment of youth. So you see the contradiction. If in Agadez up there is uranium and there is unemployment, in the Lake Chad there is unemployment and there is the drying up of the Lake Chad and there is Boko Haram. In Zender, the subterranean water is used for petrol refinery. The youth don't have jobs, and the population still are dealing with issues of water. So guess what? Gen Z, right, that you see in Kenya, in Sudan, in many parts of the world, are saying no, it cannot continue. Because some of these young people went to school, understand what is at stake. The thing that their grandparents, great-grandparents, and parents and brothers and sisters of all the generation have accepted, they are not accepting it. We may not like what the approaches they're using, but they're responding to also state government that do not see them as equal citizens. So, as James Scott says, in the protest of the weak, we never know what form it takes. If for the young women and the creative women, they use creative writing, like producing a novel like this one, like producing songs, poems, theater, play, documentary film, and film to provoke our imagination. There are some, even though there are very few young people, and in fact, the majority of young people who decide to join organizations such as Boko Haram or other forms of jihadism or wasteful violent structures, there are very few demographically. But the damage they inflict first on their own communities and on women and children and the elderly before they go into other ethnicities and religion is high. The price is very high. Yeah? So I turn to the ecological thought of West African Sahel women to call attention to this moral, ethical conversation about investing in disenfranchised communities of the Sahel region, be they women or men or the elderly, to say there are other possibilities. The world is very wealthy. You have many, we have, even in Africa. The narrative, when you start reading the narrative, you see neighborhoods, when they visit, those who are dismissed, whose villages are attacked, and they have to become refugees in their own countries. When they come to the capital cities or urban areas, they see those mansions. They're like, are we citizens of the same countries? This is Africa. It sounds like it's Gambino's song, This is Africa, right? Hip hop, right? So they ask the question, Abuja exists, these mansions? Niamey exists? And you can see where the flow of money is coming. When political elite negotiates contracts, you look at the architecture, it tells you where the corruption money is coming. The mansion may look like Peking, may look like the White House, or may look like Élysée. And yet, at the bottom, you have beggars, who are not beggars because they want to beg in the capital cities. They have been displaced. And those are the kind of narrative that Razina T. Mohammed and many other writers that I could not cover today will be talking about. Here you have a sociologist, Amina Were. Aisha Maki studied at the University of Saint Louis in Senegal. She produced Zender, the film. It's a great film to watch. Another Niger woman, Amina Were, is here in conversation with her father, who was working in the uranium company until they start to see men falling because they're falling from cancer related to the exploitation of uranium. And they did not know about it. And there was no human rights issues, and there were no right to care. They just come home to die. So she has produced a film. And when we look at the title, you say, wow, Anger in the Wind. Anger is the word in the Wind is about the life of uranium in Niger. She's not creating a huge revolution against any company, but just showing what has happened and what is ongoing and calling attention for an ethics of care and the solidarity. It is a peaceful negotiation of the new order of how to do trade that is very important in producing revenue for countries so that the youth and their families can flourish the same way that the companies are flourishing. So it is also narratives that speaks to African government, not in our name. We are not creating a revolution of exploitation when you are not accountable to anybody. These are the kind of narrative I'm interested in. And they speak in local languages. They translate them in French, and they're dubbed in English and in any world language so that people understand the narrative is not a narrative of isolation from the world. Quite to the contrary. They want the world to come, the world to be in conversation, the world to be in solidarity with them, the world to come and witness for the world rather than the world to stay away and receive narratives from other people and other organizations that do not care beyond the story of profit. And that profit is from within and from outside. So the two collaborate. I feel it's very important to see this work. So what is the gendered dimension of extractivism, of neglect of population? Those are what you think in those narratives. The same place that we're talking about in the Sahel, Sahara, Agadez, has become the place where it is not only the people from Niger who are in places like Agadez. These are young people from Nigeria, southwestern Nigeria, eastern Nigeria, Cameroon, and other African countries, crossing across the Sahara, the Sahel, Sahara, to cross the Mediterranean. Because just like Niger, youth who get their degree, these are college graduates, high school graduates, who do not have employment. Even in those areas where there are extractive industries, they try their luck at the risk of even dying in the Sahara or in the Mediterranean, trying to make it to Europe or any other places in the world where they think they can try their lives, a better luck. So Agadez, Niger, is not only a place which has become a contentious space dealing with the question of uranium or petrol or gold, but it is the place where now the European Commission, the EU, want to use it as the place of containment of African crossing the Sahara and the Mediterranean to make it to Europe. There are narratives about Agadez to talk about the plight of young African from other countries of the world landing themselves there. During COVID, I was working to find out what happens to these African youth from all over Africa who are in Agadez at the time of COVID. You just have to listen to rappers, to filmmakers who try to address this issue of the African youth migrant refugees who are landed, who are settling in Agadez, in Niger, where there is no social protection. And it is COVID, global pandemic. So you see the cell phone. The cell phone is the technology they use to try to inform their families of their plight, their lives in Agadez, Niger. So before concluding, I always want to remind people, what I write, I'm writing from the position of privilege. The privilege afforded to me by the gift, the generosity to have formal education, to have a scholarship. But because of that privilege, I also have to continue honoring life. I'm not the only one who does it. There are other people, especially the young generation. And the danger is not to be the only one. We have to multiply ourselves in that mission. So these are Sahel women coming from the same place that I described. Given the opportunity, Dr. Halima Hima has done her degree at Harvard, has done her degree at Cambridge, is working for the World Bank in areas dealing with education. She grew up in Arlit, Agadez. She understands, so all her writings, she talks about issues of investing in girls' education, investing in boys' education in areas of inequalities of abject poverty. I started my talk with Dr. Fajimaina, who is right here at NASA, who is an affiliate professor right here at the University of Maryland. So when you meet them, they will give you greater narratives. Dr. Fatoumata Adelbari did her degree. She's a medical doctor and also a novelist and a creative writer. She's right here at the World Bank, working and dealing with issues of public health education and economics. So it is possible, when there is investment in human beings, for people to emerge and try to do things. And all I'm trying to do is like what the Nobel Peace Laureate Wangari Maathai said, let's be the hummingbird and drop our drop of water so that there will be a replenishing of the earth and life. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a lot of food for thought. From the Sahel, the country of Niger, the entire continent, to the global, what she has said can be replicated in other parts of the world. So I'm not going to take the stage. I just want to give you an opportunity to either ask questions or make a comment. Professor Alidou is available to entertain your questions. But we also are here to hear your comments. So if you are interested, you just raise up your hand, and I'll hand you over the mic.
Thank you very much, Ousseina, for your kind word first. And my question, and for the excellent presentation that has enlightened all of us, I think. My question was more of a comment than a question, I guess. But I was wondering what would happen when all these Gen Z movements in the world, in Morocco, in Nepal, in Kenya, you cited, what was the last one recently, in Cameroon, going on?
Yeah.
When they start linking, given all the multidimensional problems that you just talked about, can you tell us more about what you think would happen when all these movements start linking now?
Yes, yes. That's an excellent question, Prof. Kaba. Thank you. If my senior brother says that. So each generation, so you think of May 68, right, in Europe, May 68, right? It had a world impact, right? And now the speed at connection is even greater because of the cell phone. And that's why I showed yeah. So in this one, right? The cell phone is there. So when borders are closed, right? When borders are closed, they tell each other what other borders open, right? So I'm looking at it, the border of thinking too, because the lack of literacy and the translation. For instance, young people are connecting with each other. For instance, in the book Protest Art and Social Change across the border of Niger and Nigeria. This is during COVID. If the students of Ghanaian students, Cameroonian students, and Nigerian students who were studying at Wuhan at the theater of COVID, they were medical students, and why my first book was not to write any linguistics book. It's to bear witness to how structural adjustment has impacted on African universities. Yeah, the dismantling of African universities was a structural adjustment program. That Africa does not need a higher education. What Africa needs is vocational training. That's what Du Bois contested. The Du Bois debate with Timothy Washington in chapter 2 of his book is to say no. We need also the mind. Because if you cultivate all those skills, at the end you have to have the mind to understand how to generate resources that will continue to make society flourish in a healthy way. Right? So I see the potential of the youth. But we have seen the time where people are talking about child soldiers. But African youth are saying, no, we don't want to die. Even if we are seeing what is going in Sudan, or with Boko Haram, or with Cameroon, or this and that, but the majority of African youth want to live. We want life. We are working to cultivate life. And that's what is happening in Latin America, that's what is happening right here in America, and that's what is happening in France, in every part. We want life, right? So I believe that life will come up. My teachers were the ones who experienced, they can go 6 months without salary. Senegal went through that. If we look at the edited book, A Thousand Flowers, which I've edited with Sylvia Federici and Georgetown Francis, two American philosophers who went to Nigeria during structural adjustment program. One was teaching at Konakut, and the other was teaching at the University of Alabama. He left America to only come to see this. And at the time when the Naira was going down, it just like the structural adjustment happened, and the SEPA was down, and then all these neoliberal economic austerity measures, where this is the first time that children start to see fathers not coming home because they lost job, and they're embarrassed because to be a father is not just biological. It is to fulfill certain obligations. And the fathers were coming late at night when everybody was sleeping, right? We didn't have those concepts in the Sahel, where family is almost together. You eat, you eat. If somebody is not there, you will not eat. We eat communally, just like in Senegal and other places. So if one person is absent, especially the father, or an uncle, or the senior brother, you know that the family is beginning to disintegrate. And so shame. What those negative economic policies have done is an assault on human dignity. It's really shame, right? So we saw strikes. We went on strike a lot. And that happens in several African countries. That's why we documented it. We documented the loss of lives because government were attacking, shooting young people protesting, and many people lost their jobs. Doctors lost their jobs. Economists lost their jobs. People start to go into migration. So this migration story, the refugees of brain, the question of African brain. And I know it's a brain circulation. I refuse, there is no such thing as brain. The brain is forced to circulate, and to circulate in a way that it creates a problem of hospitality. Thank you. Thank you, appreciate it.
Tell me more about the Green Wall movement, the Great Green, the Green Belt movement. I've heard about it. Like it's about like planting like greenery around like the Sahara Desert to like stop the expansion of it. Could you tell me more about that?
The regreening of the Sahel?
The Green Belt movement.
Yes.
The Great Green Wall.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so this is an initiative that many African countries decided that they're going to regreen the Sahel. And so from the Atlantic to Djibouti, to the Red Sea, right? And one of the examples that I try to address is where, for instance, in the eastern Niger, women contributed a lot to the regreening of a vast area of a zone that became desert, only for them to lose land once they start that regreening. And then countries start, technically African governments are supposed to contribute to that effort. But many African countries stop contributing to that effort because it means that they have to invest. And this is a great initiative that the Organization of African Unity has approved. And it starts working. And we see that communities have used the indigenous knowledge system of how to regreen space. In Senegal, there are great documentaries showing the ways in which in the desert area, where the desert is encroaching, communities are working, especially women, to regreen the space, and men are supporting. But when government don't support, it means that the effort cannot continue because people have to go fetch for income to feed their families and all that. Most of these regreening activities were happening on a voluntary basis, basically, right? So the land grabbers are also disrupting that possibility. And that's where the problem lies. Thank you.
You can come forward.
First of all, thank you. It was a very great lecture. I really enjoyed myself. So I'm specifically interested in herbal medicine, especially in Africa. And I was wondering if you could offer more perspective to how like ecological strain could or has affected herbal medicine and use of that specifically in the Sahel.
Yes, thank you so much. What's your name?
Kirsten.
Kristen, thank you. Yeah, so imagine everyone who is doing or who come from Africa, how many hospitals exist and where you find the hospitals and where you find health infrastructure. The way we understand, oh, I have a headache, I'm going to see a doctor. Most African places, and even here during COVID we experienced, the rural areas don't have all this. And yet people are healthy and people are continuing. One great thing that people are increasingly recognizing is the place of herbal medicine and indigenous knowledge about how to cure certain diseases which may not be so advanced that locally people can cure. African herbalists, if you come to my university, like I work with colleagues at the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences and looking at African medicinal plants. That is very important. India, China are working with indigenous plants, indigenous medicine. Most African societies, you go to the herbalist. Yes, there may be issue of dosage and all that, but that has sustained life for so long that now increasingly you go to pharmacies. Like I work with a group of pharmacists, chemists in Niger. When we go our lab at Rutgers, we go to Niger to work with pharmacists. What we are doing is to look at the practice of the affordability of drugs. If the communities are facing affordability of drugs, what are the other resources that can still help and that are potent that can help? Colleagues at SEB, School of Environmental and Biological Science, if you go, my colleague is Professor Jim Simon. We go to Niger, Senegal, Ghana, and all that, working with herbalists. looking at indigenous languages and the contribution of their healing practice and the negotiation with our lab to see the ways in which modern science can work with this indigenous science to help nurses, doctors to integrate that. In Niamey, we work with many midwives who work with women, even in urban peripheries where there is no access to maternity centers. We are working with these herbalists to say, okay, midwives, how do we deal with this and give back? So it happens also in America, all right? So increasingly, this recognition that these other forms of knowledge system have scientific value, and we need to be in dialogue rather than saying, well, they're doing voodoo, or the dosage is this and that, and yet it works. Malaria has been there in Africa, and people are dealing with malaria, yellow fever, so many other things, right? Which does not mean that we have to essentialize indigenous practices, because there are areas where they don't work. But it's through that dialogue, transcultural dialogue across science, that we are able to make it work and make it affordable for all. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much for your lecture. I especially like the point that you made about ecological narratives and how when the stories of Black women, especially in the Sahel area, aren't being heard, they can tell those stories through creative writing, poetry, and things of that sort. My question more so connected towards like what's going on in the United States today, but I do think it'll affect a lot of other areas in a couple of years. My question was about how we can use ecological narratives in the United States to fight against unfair AI development in the United States and worldwide, especially as, like, for example, in PG County, which is a county in Maryland, there's a lot of AI development centers that are actually affecting the environment for people who live there locally and causing local public health crises. And I know that it affects a lot of people, especially like being Gen Z in my area. I just wanted to know, like, for example, how can I use ecological narratives to kind of help fight against like AI development?
Okay, thank you so much. What's your name?
My name's W.E.B Du Bois.
Lavia, thank you, Barbe. Appreciate your wonderful question. So, technology. I'm a great admirer of technology, innovation, science. So, when computers came, they say, oh, that's the end of us. Right? Right? Some generation, we can say, everybody was afraid of computers. It's like every tool, every science. We just gave this example where now scientists are recognizing medicinal plants and indigenous knowledge system and all that. At the beginning, yes, technology, when you see the history of science, we see the casualties. But human agency can work to say it need not be like that. We can use ethics of care to say, okay, AI is here. The same way that we saw this young man in Agadez or wherever he was using cell phone to communicate and to find navigation. Where am I going to land? If this border is closed, I'll go, right? So it is ethics. We should not refuse to engage those proponents of AI. They're members of our community. They too want to continue living. Their science, our science, is worth it as long as we are committed to making it good for all of us. It may take time to continue negotiating. So this is why, for instance, when Du Bois was writing the way he was. He was even expelled. He died in Africa, in Ghana. But today, we are honoring his life. And to me, it's not different from any other human endeavor. So AI today is our challenge. But our challenge is not to give up on continuing to negotiate, to have a table, a space for dialogue with the AI proponents, for the AI to be used for the common good, for humanity and the environment. And it is possible. It is very possible. So that's the call for the Gen Z, to be very imaginative and develop strategies, not just tactic of confrontation, but strategies that will force positively people to come to this forum like this to say, we want you to see the common good for AI so that it can make communities prosper, not make communities disappear. That's not the goal of humanity. The goal of humanity is for us to continue celebrating life. So I believe in the prospect of AI. If it's deracialized and cleansed from its class bias and all that, but create employment, become environmentally sound. I'm not against the exploitation of uranium. I can give you the example. Without uranium, I will not be here because all my schooling was paid. The state, the Niger state, is a poor state. But once there was uranium, the state can negotiate something that can allow it to promote public education. I went to a government education school. The university was able, at the University of Niamey, which becomes Abdou Moumouni University, was possible to develop because of the revenue from uranium. You understand? So I am one person who sees that, but I also see the other side, that it was not given, the revenue was not enough to think ecologically. And it wasn't fair trade. Because that's why we're still having even military coup d'etat, which we do not need in the 21st century. Yeah? So, is it possible? There are many European countries extracting minerals without polluting their environment. Is it possible to follow that model? Why is it not good for Africa? Why isn't it not good for communities in Maryland hosting AI? So to me, it's that consciousness, that the American physicians of conscience, who are very environmentalists, those are the kind of things they try to deal with. That yes, we need science, but we need science that does not pollute. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
It's 8 o'clock. Wow, a round of applause for Professor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Yeah, Jere Jeff. Jarama. Dalu. Yeah, merci. Thank you for colleagues who help us. Everyone, thank you.